Hey guys, it's Evan. It's the end of August 2024, and I'm going through and I'm cleaning some baby children's pythons, and I wanted to make a video about how I set them up, and I want to talk about a key concept with setting up any baby, especially small snake, which is making sure that they can encounter their food and their water. And beyond that, I'll tell you that these are really amazing animals. They only get to be about the size of a garter snake, so they are pretty accessible to people. They're hardy, they're low barrier to entry. They can be kept in a relatively small sized enclosure. Even as adults, they'll never need anything bigger than a medium mouse. I think they're really wonderful animals, and that's why I chose to breed them and produce them and bring them into the hobby. And if you're wondering about how to contact me in real life, the best way to contact me is to get a hold of me on Facebook. My profile name is Evan Kay, K-A-Y, and you'll see a picture. Usually I have a picture of a reptile in my profile picture. But go ahead and add me as a friend there, because if you're watching this, I'd love to connect with you in other ways and talk to you about these guys. But I'll just tell you that, and I want to talk to you about how I set them up. And the hardest part about setting these guys up when they're this size is finding an enclosure that is completely escape-proof. And I would just recommend that you use some sort of airtight food container. These guys this is what I start them off on. They're about half this size when they're born. And then I move them up from here. Target makes some really nice, slightly bigger crystal clear acrylic ones that have a nice solid gasket on them. But the big point here is if it's not water and airtight, and then you add little tiny air holes, you're probably going to come back and not have a snake. Do not trust these in this normal lidded tote. But beyond that, it's pretty simple. I like to use long fibrous sphagnum moss. Be careful not to over wet it, especially in these small cages. It's pretty easy to get carried away with the water, and then you just have a dripping wet. But if you manage your moisture, this long fibrous sphagnum moss is really good because it's durable, provides them burrowing. You can wet a corner of it if you need to. And beyond that, I just provide a small water bowl. And I use a lidded container and I melt a hole in it. And the reason is that contains the humidity, because otherwise it can be pretty easy to get these little containers drippy wet because they just don't have a ton of air volume. But these are they're not an arid species, but they're not a tropical species. They are a temperate species. So you don't want it to be dripping wet. But beyond that, I'll just tell you this is how I set them up. And for a heat source, you want something like 88 to 90. And you over about a quarter of one of these little totes. So be careful not to cover the whole bottom of it that much, because then you'll be able to get off of it. Or the rack that I use has back heat. You could use a little heat mat on a thermostat, or if you had a separate rack already going, even if the tubs are too big, what I'll do sometimes is I'll just put these containers on the tape in a rack. So that's how you can do that, even if you can't use a lidless rack, you can still use the heat tape in the rack. So just want to show you some holdbacks. But the other concept when you set these guys up, and this is more important when they're first starting because they're so small and they're not this well established, but there's this idea of making sure that the animal can encounter their food and their water. And so this is a concept that's not just in snakes, but like in chicken keeping, there's this concept with baby chicks called starve out. And it's the idea that you get a load of fresh chicks in and you're really excited because they're so cute. They all look beautiful and healthy, but over the course of on day like 2 or 3, you might lose a couple out of your group if you have a bunch, and for no apparent reason. And that is oftentimes due to what's called starve out, which means that they simply cannot find their food and water in this big pen. There's such a tiny thing. They don't have a lot of mentality going on yet, and they just don't access it. So they starve out. And the same thing can happen with snakes in terms of food and water. And I'll just tell you that, imagine this snake is a quarter. This is an interesting dark one. Look at the eyeballs on that one. They either tend to be like a little more like wheat and golden colored, or they tend to be this like kind of darker color. I like the darker ones with the eyeballs. Sometimes they're pretty cool. But imagine the snake is a 1/4 inch off the ground, and that water bowl is 2.5 inches off the ground. So that would be like me at 6 foot tall, trying to get up something that was 60 feet tall to drink out of a 60 foot tall drinking glass. So it's just kind of like the idea that if it's not right in front of them, they're not going to encounter it. So when they're little, I will be extra careful to mound the moss up against the water bowl so it's just a ramp right up to it. They tend to sit on there anyways. But the other thing that I'll do is when they're little, sometimes I'll spritz a little bit of water on the sides of the walls, and it's that way they can drink the droplets. They don't need a ton of water, and it's just, I think a lot of times snakes and reptiles in general are more apt to drink out of cryptic water sources. So like in the little crotch of a plant, there might be a little droplet of water. They'll drink the dew off the walls. You know, I know gecko keepers are big into that, but so just make sure that it's not like a giant bowl for this tiny snake to get up onto where they might never see it. Make sure that they can get to it in a way that feels nice and secure, so they're not going to have to cross some big open field to get their water. And then even go ahead and make sure there's a couple droplets of water occasionally for them to find, so they have a cryptic source. But these are so cool. This one's available. All of these are actually available. But yeah, let's see. I'll show you some other ones. And the other component to this is the idea of making sure that they encounter their food. And this can be, look at this. This is a banger, just robust. This one's got 10 meals in it at least. But the idea that these snakes are a little bit finicky to get feeding. These are all robustly feeding now. But the idea is that they are very apt when they don't have a strong feeding response, if you just leave the feeder overnight in their cage, to just move away from it and never pay attention again. We'll never encounter that feeder again. And so, you know, a lot of times we like to tongue feed snakes, and that's a way to make sure they encounter it, because you just throw it right in their face. But sometimes the problem is with these reluctant feeders, your presence makes them not want to eat, so you want to leave it and be gone. But the problem with, if I leave a pinky mouse in the corner over here, this snake is just like, bye, and it will never see it again. So that's why this concept of cupping your animals, and so I just use these little black deli cups, salad dressing cups, but instead of putting a big hole they can get out, I put little air holes in it, and I will close a frozen thawed feeder up in there with them overnight, and that allows them to confront the feeder. So it's kind of like, if they can't find the water, they won't drink. If they can't find the feeder, they won't eat. So making sure that they can encounter the feeder by confining them in something small like that, so that all they can do is stare at and have to confront the feeder, will make them much more apt to eat. So there's two concepts for you about setting these guys up to make sure that they do well. But I'm just going to go through and show you the last couple ones of these. These are all really great, and I would love to get them into other people's hands. Let's see. Look at these. See, these are examples of the little, like, more lightly colored ones. At this point, they're all eating off tongs, frozen thawed pinkies. Look at that one. Fun, 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 fun. I have two, these are from two different females. One of them, they start off very blotchy like this, and then they kind of fade, and the other one tends to hold it. So kind of interesting to see how these go. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.